It's the midpoint of Indiana's legislative session. The Senate narrowly passes its partisan school boards bill. Medical debt protections die on the floor, plus a collegiate transgender athlete ban, and more. From the television studios at WFYI, it's Indiana Week in Review for the week ending February 28th, 2025.
Indiana Week in Review is produced by WFYI in association with Indiana Public Broadcasting Stations. Additional support is provided by the Indy Chamber, working to unite business and community to maintain a strong economy and quality of life.
The Indiana Senate approved a bill to ban diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives in state government and public schools. Proponents say it will ensure government treats everyone equally. Critics say it's designed to instill fear and will undo generations of progress. The legislation, a combination of two bills advanced by a Senate committee, says that state agencies may not give preferential treatment to anyone based on race, sex, color, or ethnicity. It also requires state and local governments and schools to publish online all training, instructional, and curricular materials that involve non-discrimination, diversity, equity, inclusion, race, ethnicity, sex, or bias. Republican Senator Gary Byrne is the bill's author.
This bill prohibits state agencies from having DEI offices or staff who promote discriminatory treatment.
Democratic Senator Lakeisha Jackson says DEI's true purpose is removing barriers to help people reach their full potential.
Eliminating DEI means turning a blind eye to these disparities. It means pretending that biases does not exist.
The Senate approved the bill by a 34-13 vote. 4 Republicans joined with Democrats in opposition. The measure now heads to the House. Does this measure undercut progress on issues ranging from education to infant mortality? It's the first question for our Indiana Week in Review panel, Democrat Ann DeLaney, Republican Mike O'Brien, John Schwantes, host of Indiana Lawmakers, and Niki Kelly, editor-in-chief of the Indiana Capital Chronicle. I'm Indiana Public Broadcasting digital editor Lauren Chapman, in for Brandon Smith this week. Mike O'Brien, why has Indiana joined this national anti-DEI push?
Do you think Indiana was going to sit this one out?
I mean, yeah, that's I mean...
Look, I think on this and the next two subjects we're going to talk about, I think what you're seeing, these are policy reactions to what the election delivered, which was, perceived or otherwise, a revolt against what's viewed as extreme positions on diversity and inclusion, on LGBTQ issues, on we're going to talk about partisan school board elections. These are all reactions to perceived or otherwise real extreme positions that have been taken by and forced on people. And we saw a lot of that pushback in this election, which is why Donald Trump won, and he won every demographic. And this is just the policy outcome of that. So of course Indiana was going to follow this, just like corporations are following this, voluntarily or otherwise, or they're reacting to the government. Yeah. Saw Facebook was the highest profile this year that quickly moved, and we're seeing the Fortune 500 companies in mass move away from these initiatives. We're going to miss on the other end, just like we missed on this end, and hopefully find some rational place to land in the middle. But I think the advocates for this is like what they said. They said that they are tired of these decisions being made on the basis of race, sex, and otherwise.
Sure. I mean, Ann DeLaney, what do you think about that idea that because of the results of the elections, that this is kind of what the American people voted for?
I'm not sure that the American people realize what they voted for, the chaos that we see in Washington, for example. But I do think that part of it, Mike is right, that it is a reaction against extreme positions on these ends, and people feeling that they were passed over, either for admission or for jobs, based on one or more of the criteria that are out there. So I think we need to deal with that, and we need to find some way so that some of the past abuses, whether it's been racial or sex-related or gender-related, discrimination that's occurred in this country. I mean, let's be frank about it. It has occurred. It's occurred across the board, and we need to recognize that and find a method for helping to correct those past abuses. At the same time, we don't go so far that we cause the kind of reaction that we've seen politically.
Niki Kelly, kind of looking at this, very narrowly for Indiana, what are some of the consequences of this particular bill, or do we even know? Like, especially as Indiana's trying to tackle some of these big issues like maternal mortality and everything else.
I mean, I think we're already seeing it. We're seeing colleges take down their DEI pages. I remember on the House floor, the Senate floor, when they were debating this, there was discussion about whether a couple scholarships that were created in honoring former senators who were people of color, whether they would still be allowed. I mean, I think a lot of this is still, to be seen. So, I guess we'll see. And the House still is going to have their say, but I don't expect any major changes.
Yeah. I mean, John Schwantes, one of the purposes of these DEI programs and acknowledgments within state government especially is to address systemic racism, systemic sexism, systemic homophobia. I mean, can Indiana government address some of the downstream effects of that systemic of discrimination without acknowledging diversity, equity, and inclusion?
Probably not. I mean, we couldn't do it before these types of programs were put in place. Now, granted, we're not accountable for our parents and grandparents' decisions, and we have evolved, one would think, as a society in our viewpoints. But I'm not sure things automatically now are. We're going to have this idyllic situation where everybody's walks around with an IQ score done through blind testing on his or her forehead, and that becomes the sole determinant of whether that person succeeds in life. I think that's a little Pollyanna. I agree with Niki. We also don't know what the implications are of this, and that's assuming we can even agree as a society and as a state. Let's just keep Indiana for the time being. What these, even though there's an attempt to define things that you can't deal with, and you did the list in the open. That's open to so much interpretation.
Absolutely, yeah.
And to know where does the honoring of a colleague who was a person of color, as you suggest, stop, and giving special favor to a person of color start. I mean, there's just so many of these things. It's they're difficult. They're complicated.
Yeah.
And what is likely to come out of this will be a lot of litigation. This is not the kind of thing where we fix that problem, if it's a problem, but we fixed that and we're moving on. This is just the start of a discussion.
Yeah, certainly. Well, moving on, the Senate narrowly approved a bill at the midpoint deadline that will force school board races to become partisan. The bill's author says he believes school boards are already partisan, but hidden under the radar. Republican Senator Gary Burns' bill would require partisan primaries for school board candidates who want to run as Democrats or Republicans, while forcing anyone else to add their minor party designations on the general election ballot.
Like it or not, your political party is a shorthand for your overall worldviews, your values, and the way you will vote in office.
Republican Senator Liz Brown ran for school board years ago. She's opposed to the bill, saying it puts up barriers for ordinary people who want to run.
I'm not sure I would have wanted to get political that early on. I just wanted to help Fort Wayne Community Schools.
The House had its own version of a partisan school boards bill that failed to advance by the session's first half deadline. That measure's author, Republican J.D. Prescott, says he'll work with the Senate version going forward. Niki Kelly, do these political shorthands make voting in school board elections more accessible?
I don't know that accessible is the right word. I mean, anyone can vote in any school board race now. They're accessible. There are certainly people out there who I think would like it because then they don't have to do any work, right? They don't have to learn about the candidates and see where they stand on issues, and it's very easy little push the straight ticket and it's done. So, I mean, it might be easier for people.
Sure.
But
yeah. I mean, John Schwantes, thinking about that straight ticket, party vote, does that sort of lower the barrier for folks to engage in some of these, or does
it's hard to get lower than we are in terms of engagement. I mean, voters in this state and other states are lazy. Sorry if I'm offending you. They don't take it seriously. Yeah. And we are at peril because of it, because you need to do, and this is a participation sport, democracy. And how many things would you just sit back and I'll get my cheat sheet and I'll do this for important decisions, even if somebody's giving you a little, this is an R, this is a D, so you can, don't you still want to do homework? Because that suggests that the Republican Party is monolithic and the Democratic Party is monolithic. I think there are still degrees of separation and different shades of opinion within those parties, and to suggest otherwise, I think we've lost nuance. The other thing I'd point out is no candidate was prevented from espousing a political affiliation before. I could have walked around and said, I'm a libertarian, I'm green, I'm Republican, Democrat, whatever. And people could have, I think a party could have sent out a mailer saying that it endorsed me. Mm-hmm. So this just, I'm not sure what...
We are talking about this, though, in a very specific context. What is it now? 7 Indiana counties don't have access to any reporters. And so we are talking about a lot of counties that exist within news deserts. It's hard to find some of that information often. I wonder if that, having that shorthand...
Well, that assumes, though, again, that the label tells all.
Absolutely.
I joked a moment ago about having the standardized test score on our head, and we don't want labels, and we know that people should be judged in their own merits and not in a vacuum. This is a classic example, because believe it or not, I can tell you I know plenty of Republicans who don't see eye to eye with other people who bear the same party affiliation. Guarantee. And it goes.
Why are you looking at me?
I'm looking at you. You came to mind, but I'll look at her too, and because I could say the same thing about it. Just sort of cheapens the process, it seems to me.
Interesting. Yeah. I want to go over to Mike. This has been something that's come up a couple of times at the legislature. Why is this specifically a Republican push?
Well, because it's a reaction to another perceived extreme critical race theory teachings, right? And this is where this all started, that we need to know who these people are, because if you're a Republican, you're presumed to be anti-CRT, pro-school choice, and
pro-burning books.
And
I'm just saying.
He's thinking of his own platform, and that may not be entirely
but I do think, I agree with part of what John said, that I think these are really local elections, and I think these are really informed voters, notwithstanding the news deserts and that problem. But in my experience, when I was a county chairman, and I was Republican county chairman, but I wasn't obviously overseeing school board votes, but it was a big part of the election. It was a big part of the conversation, and people are really engaged, especially people with kids. They want to know who's going on there. There's a part of me that also thinks maybe we shouldn't even elect these people. They should be appointed by the governing bodies or the mayors of a city. So you're getting qualified people. It's like electing people at the county hospital board. It's like we don't do that. We have those people appointed who are qualified.
But we do also still vote for coroners in Indiana.
That's right.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be somebody who is a physician.
We only have 28% of the registered voters who vote in primaries at all,
and as low as 14%.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
and we have a lot of people out there who don't identify with a political party, but are interested in their local schools. And what does that say? Why can't they just simply run as a parent who's interested in the outcome?
It's definitely a chilling effect on
It's going to stand up and say that, to run I have to identify with Donald Trump. Wow.
Or I'm a Democrat, now I've got to go defend all the stuff Democrats are doing when I'm running for school board. It's like, I don't want to do that.
They ought to be able to run on the basis of what they want to do for their local schools without party affiliation. This is just another attempt to try to make an issue that critical race theory doesn't even exist. Okay? It doesn't even exist. And yet they held it up the same way they did English as the national language and burning the flags and every other hot button issue Republicans surface periodically as an excuse.
Those all exist. They're just marginalized, infrequent, and amplified by
Republicans.
How far do you take this? We want to equip parents with as much information as possible about the curriculum so they can raise red flags. Why stop here? I'm being facetious, anyone listening. Why not say teachers have to declare in public schools their party affiliation, so going in what the social studies teacher that's teaching little Johnny or little Sally, because that saves me time.
How about reporters too?
We've also
I've never
we've also
voted in
done-
a primary, so it might be a long wait.
That's why we have to declare. We need to know, John.
Well, we've also established a don't ask, don't tell for queer teachers in Indiana.
Yeah, exactly.
Time now for our viewer feedback. Each week we post an unscientific online poll question. This week's question: do partisan school boards put up barriers for people hoping to run? Vote A, yes, or B, no. Last week's question: should Indiana's local law enforcement agencies play a bigger role in helping enforce federal immigration laws? 19% of you voted yes, 81% said no. If you'd like to take part in the poll, go to WFYI.org/IWIR and look for the poll. Indiana lawmakers passed a measure to ban transgender women from competing in collegiate sports. The bill seeks to codify a recent executive order from President Donald Trump. The bill's author, Representative Michelle Davis, says the legislation is about fairness.
Ensuring fairness in collegiate sports is essential to protecting opportunities for female collegiate athletes.
But Representative Blake Johnson says the bill does nothing to address existing inequities in athletic opportunities.
If we truly cared about fairness, we'd be debating bills to invest in girls' sports, to expand access and to strengthen competition. Instead, we're debating a manufactured culture war issue.
The NCAA's president says there are fewer than 10 transgender collegiate athletes among the association's more than 500,000. The NCAA changed its transgender athlete policy earlier this month to conform with Trump's executive order. Republicans and Democrats split both in support and opposition to the bill. It now goes to the Senate. Ann DeLaney, advocates I talked to ahead of this vote said State House allies walked away from protecting transgender Hoosiers. So why are we seeing Democrats splitting on LGBTQ issues as federal policies become more aggressive?
I don't think that they're walking away from LGBT issues. I think that this is the perfect example of an extreme position that we've already lost on, okay, for 10 people in the NCAA. And what the Republicans want to do is hold this up as a red flag, saying that Democrats are out of control and out of touch. Okay? It is more important, I think, from the Democratic point of view, to protect the LGBT community against discrimination and against having decisions on their health care made by people in the legislature and those kinds of issues that affect a wide variety of the LGBTQ. Thank you. Population, but not the 10 people that might be involved in this, okay?
But it is interesting to note that advocates especially pointed at this kind of legislation as, you know, an example of why we see trans kids especially, you know, feeling so attacked by their government because the allies that they did have aren't standing up for them.
I understand that, but you also have, on the flip side of that, you have the parents of girls who say that it's an unfair competition to have a transgender person on the team taking their positions. So you know, there are two views to this, and the numbers are so small. There are not thousands of teenage boys lined up for sex change operations so they can play girls basketball. We know that, okay? And so they take an issue that affects a very tiny percentage of the population, hold it up, and they want Democrats to embrace it so that they can then say, see, they're completely out of touch, and they've gone way too far the other way. I think it's more important for Democrats to focus on the issues that affect the community as a whole, and not go to bat and all on an issue we've already lost the public on.
Michael Bryan, have Democrats already lost that battle?
Absolutely, they've lost that battle. I mean, look, there's a reason that Republicans in the election spent $300 million running ads in swing states that pointed out Kamala Harris's support of transgender therapy for federal prisoners. And there was no response from Kamala. She didn't double down, which would have been ridiculous. But she also didn't contextualize or change her position. It just bled.
It was also, for the record, ordered by a federal judge.
Yes.
Okay? Which is what the response should have been.
What a great answer that would have been. Put in a TV commercial.
I know.
In 2016, I ran the coalition that tried to expand the Civil Rights Act to protect LGBTQ Hoosiers so they can't get evicted from their house or fired from their job or denied health care or all these things. And where you started with, the coalition believes that these Democrats sold them out. That was the problem. You can't give that coalition, having worked for them and respect and many of those people, in that building will not give 1 inch. And you will lose all day if that's going to be the position. There's a reason that this is a progressive set of issues. They progress, right? And you can't, and particularly with the transgender community, this issue, Democrats need to go, yeah, boys shouldn't be playing in girls' sports. Let's get on the bus and drive to the next issue.
But we do also have science, like sports science, that the NCAA's original policy from 2022 was backed by science, like that transgender women athletes were actually performing worse than their cisgender counterparts. I think that, yeah.
That's fine. Then you can lose another set of election. Then you can lose Congress. You can lose every branch of government again if that's going to be the position. If that's going to be the attitude of Democrats, get ready to lose every branch of government all over again in Indiana and across the country.
Maybe in 20 years the attitude will be different.
It's progressive,
it's not,
so
yeah, that's right. But it isn't there. It isn't there now, and you've got to pick your battles, and that's not a battle that, from my perspective, it's worth the Democrats picking at the moment.
You're going to lose, and the bill can be repealed if in 20 years we go, this doesn't make any sense. And this has been socialized,
just
and
like
now we've expanded protections.
We've made tremendous advances on gay marriage and other issues. We'll get there, but we're not there yet.
John Schwantes, kind of the similar vibe. Is this a losing battle for Democrats, or is there an obligation to go to a base that has supported Democrats in the past?
I alert the media. I think we're all in agreement. Rarity. If you look at the polling, even within the Democratic Party, people self-identify as Democrats. I don't think that issue is even close. Yeah, there's so many ways to approach this issue, and Ann articulated some. It's a cliche to say you're not going to make everybody happy, but for everybody who says, I want my child who has had gender reassignment to be able to play in the sport, you have X number, probably more,
of people
saying that now that deprives my child of the opportunity. And that is one place on which this battle can be fought. But then by fighting that battle and losing, do you give up the more realistic opportunity to protect their medical rights and the rights of parents to make medical decisions for their children in terms of reassignment, away from the athletic competition, away from the court and the field? And it's the realities of ideological purity doesn't work very well in our system.
Reality.
Yeah,
or leverage this issue and try to make progress on the civil rights side. Go get those protections that still don't exist.
That being said, though, most of these are a reaction to the 2020 Bostock decision, which I'm so sorry for anybody who's had to hear me talk about the 2020 Bostock decision. That one of the things the reason why we're talking about sports right now is because of the decision that protected, from the Supreme Court precedent, employment rights on the basis of sex for transgender and other queer people. So Niki Kelly, I don't
know anything about that decision.
That is
where we're going.
I hate to abide by a slippery slope argument.
We're really going into the weeds here.
What do you expect for this bill moving forward this legislature?
I expect it to pass easily and with bipartisan overwhelming support. And that's because that's what Americans believe on a whole.
Look what happened to the governor who vetoed a bill that would have done this at a lower, this was college, there was one that dealt with high school and other competitions. And if memory serves, there was a veto overridden, so it had nothing to do in the end. And where is that person now? Not governor. Eric.
Well, and there are obvious areas where discrimination is not only possible but occurs, and those have to be dealt with. And it seems to me those have impact on so many more lives, and those are worth fighting for. I don't think it's a slippery slope.
And to revisit the theme of the show, this is exactly. I'm an American that is forced to put my pronouns on my work email. There's tampons in the men's bathroom, and now I got to support. And now women want to play in men's sport, or men want to play in girls' sports. And I've had enough of it. And they look at Donald Trump and go, "What's he talking about? Evicting illegal immigrants? I'm for him." Get me out all the rest of this stuff. And that is the election in a nutshell. It was not more complicated than that. It was an emotional reaction to this set of issues.
Well.
Okay, there you go.
And now for something entirely different. Finally, it's National Girl Scout Cookie Weekend. And As a 12-year veteran of the Girl Scouts of Central Indiana, I have perhaps the most important question to ask of our panel, starting first with Ann DeLaney. I never actually asked John a question this time, sorry. Ann DeLaney.
That's all right.
All right.
What's your favorite Girl Scout cookie?
Oh, the mint chocolate.
Really, Thin Mints?
That's not even a thing.
Thin Mints.
Absolutely,
Yes,
it's
No, I
Thin
know, but
Mints.
it's not. She doesn't even know the name.
It's a Thin Mint.
Thin
and
Mint.
there
She's
is
like,
no
she's
taste.
It's
describing
okay.
it.
It's what I get every time.
I'll tell you what it's not, trefoils. And I've got a
Trefoils,
trefoils. I've got a colleague who swears that the trefoil is the best
Are
cookie.
incredible.
That is a garbage cookie.
How, it is the original Girl Scout cookie. Again, 12-year veteran.
I'm a tag-along guy. And Molly O'Brien still has 87 boxes to sell to reach her goal. So if anybody just search Molly O'Brien Girl Scout cookie.
Oh, you're still subbing me on the question, I can see. You're subbing me again. And you didn't ask me the question.
I'm so sorry,
That's
John.
all right. Thin
What
Mint.
is your favorite?
But persimmon, of course, was in the running to be the state fruit. So note to Girl Scouts. We didn't get it as a state fruit, but could be a cookie.
We didn't get it as a state fruit for a reason.
All right.
Putting it in a cookie
All right.
isn't
Yeah,
really
I think that's all.
All right, that's it for this week. Or that's Indiana Week in Review for this week. Our panel is Democrat Ann DeLaney, Republican Mike O'Brien, John Schwantes of Indiana Lawmakers, and Niki Kelly of the Indiana Capital Chronicle. You can find Indiana Week in Review's podcast and episodes at WFYI.org/IWIR or on the PBS app. In This Week for Brandon Smith, I'm Lauren Chapman of Indiana Public Broadcasting. Join us next time because a lot can happen in an Indiana week.
The views expressed are solely those of the panelists.
Indiana Week in Review is produced by WFYI in association with Indiana Public Broadcasting Stations. Additional support is provided by the Indy Chamber, working to unite business and community to maintain a strong economy and quality of life.